Good morning and welcome to yet another webcast on negotiation and IT agreements.
Yeah.
My name is Henrik Zangenberg.
And my name is Clara Petersen.
And together we will take you through not only the do's and don'ts, but we will also try to engage you in a negotiation. So we are launching today
Like an interactive game.
An interactive game where you can participate in a negotiation. And then I think we'll just hit it off.
Yeah, we have a lot on the program today.
We have a lot on the program today. And for those of you who don't know us, this is what we do. We help people benchmark IT agreements, and we help people negotiate and renegotiate IT agreements, as it will be apparent when we move along. The agenda.
Yeah. So we will start, as you probably also saw before. We have a situation that we will go through before entering the interactive negotiation that we will present to you. Otherwise than that, we will of course introduce IT negotiations. We will touch upon the vendor interests, the value of data in your negotiations, the negotiator's dilemma, and finally the negotiation strategy that we will build upon the whole situation, and the interactive game that we will go through. So this is some of the topics that we will touch upon during the next 1.5 hours.
And as we promised in the invite to this webcast, one of the main focuses here is understanding the vendor, because in order to have a good negotiation, you need to understand the counterpart. So we will spend some time going behind the scenes in the vendor organization and try and give you an insight into what is it really that drives the vendors in different kind of negotiations. And that's also something that will be part of our small exercise that you will have to help us with as we move along. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the situation for the coming negotiation is that it's a renegotiation of a potential extension of an IT operations agreement. It's 1 year before the contract ends, and the agreement is today 50 million Danish crowns a year. There have been done an analysis prior to the negotiation that shows that the price is 25% above benchmark, which means that the benchmark for this agreement is 40 million Danish crowns a year. There is some inconvenience and problems in the contract. The SLAs do not match the actual need. There is some issues with the operational performance on a dedicated technology. And then there is a lack of proactivity from the supplier. So this is like the situation. Please keep this in mind. We will of course touch upon it again when the game begins. But this is like the situation as is.
And just for the sake of the role playing, I will be the rather defensive client.
Yeah, and I will be the hardcore vendor.
Okay, so just you know the person gallery here. Before we start, let's just take a little dive into the world of IT negotiation strategy. Just give you the main lines, the main headlines of what IT negotiations are like and what you need to know about them.
Some of the elements that we will touch upon here will also be quite helpful in the coming negotiation.
Yeah, I think we'll start out by saying that there is a lot of good and also some bad literature that you can consult with if you want to go deeper in the school of negotiation theory. We believe that the two best books written on that subject, apart from the one that I wrote, but is in Danish, so we didn't put it in here, but we believe the two best books are Getting to Yes and Getting Past No. Those are the Bibles, the Old and the New Testament here in our company at least. A funny book showing what went on behind the Iron Curtain during the Cold War is the Kremlin School of Negotiation. That is more to get the insight of how the other part thought about things, which is, by the way, quite similar to how the Americans thought about things, which is represented in getting to yes. And then word of warning, I do urge you to buy and read Trump, The Art of the Deal, but do remember by long, big parts of that book is really explaining what not to do, because considering a negotiation, a game with a winner and a loser, is not really that helpful in IT negotiations, and we can get back to that a little later.
Yeah, but we help a lot of clients to negotiate here in Zangenberg and have some general negotiation experiences that you need to be aware of before entering. And that is the best and final is seldom neither best nor final. I think we have seen a best and final version 5. This means that the vendor often presents the client with the best and final offer, which is not the best or the final offer. So keep the ball in play even after you get the presented best and final offer.
We do urge everyone to start working with negotiation as a discipline, something you can train, something you can learn, something you can put into systems and basically professionalize in your organization. And we can just see that those companies who do that do get better deals, but they also get better relationships because they're simply better at handling the process of negotiation in a way that leaves both parties in a better place.
Mm. And then the third experience is that don't negotiate the other party below their pain points. This will create a bad deal if the agreement is simply causing the vendor to lose money. So there is like a beautiful point where you don't go below, also it's maybe called the benchmark, which is this best market price.
Yeah. And this comes back to Trump, by the way, because this is really the Trump dogma is really to negotiate hard, to basically win over the opponent, which would mean trying to get below their pain points. But in an IT agreement that runs over many years, where you have what we call repeated games in terms of more negotiations after this negotiation, whenever you negotiate someone below their pain point, you will get a much harder negotiation next time, because they will try to win back what they lost before. Yeah, what you need to do is basically, as negotiation theorists say, make the pie bigger. Find elements to put into the negotiation that has value to you, items and options that will have value to the other part, and preferably elements that will have big value to the other part and no cost to you, because those are the things that will make the pie bigger. You have more to share, and basically whenever you put something in, you should expect to get something in return to some extent in the negotiation. So the quest for options to make the pie bigger is an integral part of any negotiation. And I promise you, we will get back to that.
Yeah. And then you need to take your time to explore the interests, both your own, but also the interest of the vendor that you are sitting in front of at the negotiation table. Because often it's different things that will have value, both for you, but also the vendor. So take your time to map out the interests, both so you're aware of your own, and also so that you can use your interest instead of setting it as a position as well.
Whenever you're negotiating something that has the element of repeated games, so whenever you negotiate with someone where you expect to negotiate again in the future, these are general negotiation advices that will apply. So it doesn't really apply when you buy a house, because that's not a repeated game. You shouldn't be that worried about the pain point of the other party. You should be more concerned with whether you will be able to sell the house yourself and not lose money. So it doesn't apply for the kind of single negotiation game, but for everything repeated. These are very good advices. But then the question is, of course, what's then special about IT? And if we dive into what we believe are the elements that you should be especially aware of when you are negotiating IT agreements, these are, we believe, the 6 most important points.
Yeah. So this one is close to our hearts, that the big customers does not necessarily get the biggest discount, but they will meet the best negotiators. And this is also present in what we call the software smile, where the small customers will get the highest price, the list price. The medium customers will actually get, have we observed, some of the best prices, where the largest customers get the high price again because they meet the best negotiators. So this is not a linear relationship in the market of IT.
And moving back to the negotiation at hand, we should expect to get a hard negotiator, a very skilled and a very skilled negotiator on the other side, because this is a big contract with 50 million Danish kroner a year. So if it was a 5-year contract, it would be a 250 million Danish kroner. So that's a big contract. So we should expect to get some competent negotiation competition at the table here. Okay. The second point to make about the IT is that the IT market is not a transparent market. In many cases, the pricing is hidden. The market pricing is hidden to the clients, to the customers. We in our company and with our research service, quarterly analytics, we try to make up for that by providing some market data on IT operation, but it still is a market where a lot is hidden, and it's difficult for clients to basically evaluate whether the price they have is a competitive price if they do not put things out for an RFP. And you can say that the RFP, the request for proposal, where you ask for competing offers from players in the market, that is the preferred way to basically get an overview of the pricing in the market. But there are alternatives. Obviously, benchmarking, the service we provide, is the alternative to try and get competitive pricing. And be aware that the RFP can be quite a elaborate process, time-consuming process to describe and to describe your requirements and evaluate the different proposals. But the fact of the matter is, when you go to the table, the market is not a transparent one.
Yeah. For some of the ITO services, there has been a significant and constant decrease in the unit prices. This is contrary to most all other elements in other markets, like the salary and the general inflation that keeps increasing quite steadily. So for these IT services, like server and storage, there have been a constant and significant decrease, and that's also accounting for the salary increases in the IT market and such, where the Moore's law, where you get more compute for the value, is, how can you say, has a bigger impact in the price than the increase in the salaries and the general inflation.
Exactly. So even during the last 2 years, we've seen that prices are still decreasing. So not as much as they did before, but we are still seeing a price decrease on the unit prices in IT operation. That's
so
true.
If you have an IT operations agreement where you are indexed with the general market inflation, I think you should contact us.
Yeah. And if you have an ITO contract that was signed 4 or 5 years ago, it will be above benchmark today, unless you actually signed a contract that was below benchmark when you signed it, which is quite rare.
Yeah.
Okay, the Wagner opera. Typical vendor negotiation tactics leads to prolonged negotiation, as we say. So this is something vendors have found out that actually dragging these negotiations out actually benefits them, because most clients tend to give up in the end and accept best and final 2, perhaps, instead of waiting for best and final 5. So being, tenacity is rewarded. You need to be stubborn in order to succeed in a IT negotiation.
Yeah. And then there's the Stockholm syndrome, that you fall in love with your
hostage
taker. That a perceived monopoly situation often stands in the way for many of the customers, that the view of their own negotiation options. And that is that this perceived monopoly situation, for example, in a Microsoft negotiation, Oracle, SAP, stands in the way of that their own options is actually quite valuable for the vendor.
Like you should say to your children, you can do much more than you think you can do.
Yeah.
You're fantastic.
Yeah.
Perhaps people say that too much. I don't know, but you should say that to yourself as well in an IT negotiation, that you have a lot more options than you think, because you get paralyzed by the view of this perceived monopoly situation.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the last point is that in IT negotiations, contract terms can be more important than the prices. Obviously, pricing is important, but a lot of contract terms will influence the way that you will have to live with the contract, and they can translate into much higher cost, both direct cost to the vendor, but also indirect cost in your organization if you don't get it right. So make sure that you understand the terms and conditions side of everything.
We can provide you with what an effective negotiation requires. That is preparation, a strategy and a plan, and some well-defined roles. So right now, before you are entering the coming negotiation, we are preparing you for with teaching you IT negotiation theory and some effective, I can say,
handles,
yeah, in the coming negotiation to map out the interest, how to generate options and such. Then you need a strategy and a plan. Here we will go through the negotiation strategy template that we use. That is very important to keep updated when the negotiation is rolling. And then you need some well-defined roles in the negotiation.
So,
yeah.
And basically what it says is, don't forget to prepare before you negotiate.
Yeah.
People that think that negotiation is just about going into the room and start negotiating, they've completely misunderstood what good negotiation is about. Good negotiation is about knowing things about you, yourself, your own interest, knowing things about them, their interests, and knowing things about what you need to negotiate. And you need to put all that knowledge into the strategy and make sure that you basically put that into action in a good way that will give you the best results. Yeah. Okay. When we go into a negotiation, we believe there is what we call a zone of possible agreement. Now this could sound banal, but it basically is our assumption that we do have a range, a target zone, something we would prefer to pay on the left side, our walkaway, what we will be willing to pay, but not a dime more, and similarly the seller will have a walkaway that say that we can't go below this price. That's our pain point. And then they have a desired price, the list price or whatever that is. And we believe there is some kind of ZOPA. Now, when we go to the negotiation table, in many, first of all, we need to have a target zone. So we need to go to the negotiation table with some kind of target zone. We know where our walkaway is. We also need to have some kind of, if not assurance, then make it credible to ourselves that there is a ZOPA, even though it seems impossible in the beginning, because the seller will not disclose their walkaway, like we will not disclose our walkaway. So it is our basic assumption that the ZOPA is there. We need basically to get into that ZOPA. That's the whole deal. But many times it seems completely hopeless in the beginning, because the seller will typically start at their desired price and basically move slowly, very, very slowly down towards their walkaway. Yeah. Going back to our observation before about the Wagner opera, many clients have rewarded vendors by giving them the desired price or something close to that. And they've seen that it actually works to be stubborn, to go into the Wagner opera. So basically we need to work with them to make sure that the ZOPA materializes itself.
Yeah, we have some 4 central elements that we will walk you through that is really crucial in a negotiation. And the first one is the people, that you have to separate the people in the room from the problem in the negotiation. So you have to, when you hit a wall in the negotiation, you have to say, is this because of the person that I'm sitting in front of, or is there a problem in the negotiation?
Yeah, because sometimes it's about the people. The first thing you need to find out is it because the person in front of me is either not being constructive, or does the person in front of me not have the mandate to actually negotiate within into the zone of possible agreement? Do I need other people at the table from the other side? Yeah. If it's all about the people being, obnoxious, not constructive, sarcastic, whatever they might be, or just plain out stubborn, well, go to Getting Past No, the book that we started out with, or our own book in Danish on negotiation. There's a chapter there also about how to handle the people side, and also basically the negotiation psychology of managing people in a negotiation, because that is one discipline. Solving the problem is another. Yeah. So that's about the people. Then there's understanding the interests. Yeah.
We also touched a bit upon this before, but you have to focus on the interest, both your own and the vendors, instead of the positions. And we will also walk you through what's the main difference between...
Why don't we do it
at the same time? That it's important to separate the positions from the interest in the room. The position is the thing that we say that we want or don't want in the agreement. For example,
best and final.
Best and final. There has to be a penalty clause in this agreement. We cannot accept this. We want this and this in the agreement. Versus the interest, that is where the position, can you say, reflect the interest below the position. So that it's very important that you deliver on time, which is actually translated from there has to be a penalty clause in this agreement. We want to make sure that you have some incentives to deliver on time. This is the interest behind the position. And from the vendor's side, we cannot accept this penalty clause. Is that the penalty clause is part of our price calculation setup. We need to we price it into the agreement and cannot not have this penalty clause. And we want to offer you this at a competitive price, which is not possible for us if we have this clause in the agreement. So this is the interest from the A is from the client side and B is from the vendor side, and the position on the left side from the vendor and the client.
Yep, which is, and it's all, in any negotiation, it's important to understand the interests. Yep. So, when you say to your spouse, or your spouse tells you, I don't want to go to Germany for holiday, you have to find out why they don't want to go to Germany. What is it about Germany that makes them say that?
Yeah.
Because if they say, I don't want to go to Germany for holiday because of the weather, perhaps you should try and sell them on something in the southern part of Germany, and say that is this tremendous good weather down there.
So the thing that is important to a spouse is that there is a weather guarantee for sunny weather.
It could also be that the fact that the interest is, I don't like the German food.
Yeah.
That's another interest in this negotiation. And then you have to find, take them to Berlin, would be my advice, because there are very, very good international restaurants in Berlin. So I don't want to go to Germany, that's the position, but really it's about something else back behind. And it's the same in IT negotiations. Going back. Sorry.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Okay, so the third crucial element of any negotiation is the options. And the options, that's about having ideas of stuff you can put into the negotiation, you can put into the agreement that you're negotiating. So that could be anything from, what if I bought something else? What if we change the contract length? What if we put in some options for further products? What if we have had another discount ladder? You can change anything. Also asking the other part, what would be a value for you to have in the contract? Which is really the most important question never asked. That is, what would be a value for you in this contract? If the third offer, if you hit a wall at the third offer, try and be creative about stuff you could put into the agreement that could sweeten the deal for them, that could make you get out of the locked position. So that would be my suggestion anytime. And if you are out of good ideas, give us a call. We have a whole list of good ideas that you can put into negotiations and that we've seen working in many cases. But we'll get there because we'll get into the vendor interests, because getting good options is also about understanding the interest of the vendor. Let's go through the last one quickly. I'll just take it. Yeah. Criteria. Whenever you are discussing pricing, new options and stuff like that, it's always good to have some kind of agreement about what are good, close to objective criteria that make things reasonable. For example, if you're talking about pricing, is there a market index? We provide market index, we provide unit prices, and so on. Is a benchmark? A benchmark could be a criteria. Could be saying, okay, it needs to benchmark against peers of similar agreements. And whenever you can agree on a criteria, on some way of determining how we arrive at a reasonable price, at least part of it, you're getting closer to an agreement. And it's the same when we buy a house. There's a common understanding that there is an average square meter price in any area in Denmark. And that is kind of the basis for all negotiations about house deals. And obviously, if you have the beach in your backyard, well, the price is probably higher than if you had the railway running through your backyard. So obviously there are modifiers to the average price, but that is a good criteria for starting the negotiation. And often we advise people to have a negotiation before the negotiation about the criteria on where you start. Where the negotiation before the negotiation is really about setting the ground rules for the negotiation. agreeing on the timetable, but also discussing which criteria we will use to determine what's reasonable. Okay, so
let's hit the negotiation table.
Let's hit the negotiation table, and I need you to help me negotiate with Clara here. So based on what you know from our previous introduction to the negotiation, what would you say would be the vendor's main interests? And you just write it in the chat. Ensure long-term source of profit. Thank you. Yeah. Revenue generation. Big contract with long commitment and a high profit margin. Yep. So these three comments, they basically concentrate on one thing that is extremely important for vendors, and that is, of course, the profit margin. Long-term source of profit. I think that is true. These organizations are, of course, in the market to generate a profit, and these kind of contracts, they should provide the long-term profit. A satisfied customer to use as a reference. That's true as well. And you could say, if we break that into two, a satisfied customer that we can use as a reference, that's one reason why we'd like satisfied customers. But another reason for satisfied customers is satisfied customers do not provide us with a lot of extra work, right? The satisfied customer receives the IT operational services without disturbing us with complaints. Obviously complaints that in the first place were our own fault, but the satisfied customers are typically also the most profitable customers. Yeah, the client has accepted limited proactive work from supplier, could also be a target to continue down this path. That is true. That is either completely true or completely false, but it could be true that would be an interest from their side. Any idea why it could be an interest from their side to do the opposite? Obviously, the fact that they are proactive potentially also means that they miss out on some add-on selling in the agreement period, which is what we see in many cases, is that there is an interest from the vendor to upsell, so to basically enter into an agreement that will allow them to sell more, which is why if that is an interest, obviously we could construct cases where that's not an interest, but if it is an interest to basically expand within the single client, then proactivity should be a priority. Now going back to the big contract with long commitment and a high profit margin, these are of course all true. The high profit margin is of course true, but most vendors will settle with a market average profit margin, and understanding that there's a high price, there's a high cost of sale, of acquiring a new client. That actually means that it is the most important thing is that it is profitable, not necessarily overly highly profitable.
And for a long period of time, it is a sure generated profit over this period of time that the contract is entered into. So that is of course a main interest to also keep the client. Maintain the client relationship. Thank you very much for all your input. I think we got a good picture of some of the interests that will drive this client. So now we can deep dive into what is the typical interest, both the clients but also the vendor interest.
Yeah.
So for your point of view, it's of course to have the lowest possible price that is reasonable and not below either party's pain points.
Yeah, you can say that all the interest we have on the left side those are the typical interest. Not all of them will be in play. So basically, when you go into a negotiation, you should consult with this list and put and say, okay, which of these are my interests, and which of these are the most important, and do I have other interests than the one listed here? These are just the typical client interest. And I know it's a little small on the screen. You will get the presentation afterwards, so you can consult with this list. But on the right side, and that's you.
That's my interest. And as you can also see, you mapped some of them, but there is some typical vendor interest that didn't get in the chat. So let's try and go through some of them. Of course, it's to maintain the relationship and extend the agreement. You all got that, and also to make a profitable business, both for the customer as a whole across all the contracts. Now it's this big ITO operations contract for the 50 million Danish crowns a year.
Just a short note on the first one. Clients tend to underestimate the strength of this interest. But if you try and go into the vendor organization, maintaining existing contracts is a primary interest. It's really expensive to lose a client.
Yeah.
It's really expensive to get a client, and therefore whatever it takes to maintain the relationship is of huge value internally in a client organization. Understand that and utilize that.
Yeah. It's much cheaper to extend an agreement than to source a new client.
Exactly.
Yeah. But then there's also the risk that I want as a vendor to minimize the commercial risk with this client. And use standardized service instead of specialized services, which I have a standard framework for. Have
a transition plan that I know will work instead of a compressed one that has a risk attached to it.
Exactly. And then I want to upsell. I want to increase the revenue for you. I want to increase the revenue share of business. I want to sell other products. That could be cloud, that could be software. Which, as you also said, or also mentioned in the chat, that I have not been very proactive. So maybe I want to increase my proactiveness in the next period, so I can actually sell you more of my business.
And risk is a big thing. So there's profit and profitability and more revenue, and then there's risk. These are you could basically say these are the two main areas, and risk comes in many forms. And you need to be aware that they will not always tell you where they are afraid of the risk. Sometimes you have to basically ask questions to understand what kind of risk they are trying to remedy in the agreement, or what kind of risks that they are afraid of. Some of it has to do with you, basically things in your organization that poses some kind of risk. They're afraid you don't have the right resources to receive the services, that you will not be able to provide whatever preconditions for them to deliver the services. But there will also be risk on their side, risk associated with their resources or lack of their level of standardization and so on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of risk, and the last one, the last bullet here, the responsibility. So who's responsible for what? Whenever that is unclear, it should be a concern for the client, for the vendor. Sorry.
Yeah. But I think there's also one bullet here that we didn't touch upon. That's the predictability. As a vendor, also a very important interest across, the typical vendor that we see. So the predictability in the next agreement.
So understanding that these are the main interests for a vendor, and just saying these are the main interests of an ITO vendor, because if you consult with our book, you'll see that Software vendors have slightly different interests. Application development vendors have other interests and so on. But these are the main interests of an ITO vendor, an IT operations vendor. Now, okay, so we need to move on in our negotiations.
Now you need to help Henrik.
Yeah, I have basically two questions to you. The first one is that we did perform a benchmark, as you heard. So we know that the benchmark is 40 million and the current price is at 50 million. Okay, so should I put that benchmark on the table as part of the negotiation here in the beginning of the negotiation? So should I inform them? Yes or no? I think we
can say that
with some level of certainty that the result is pretty clear. We have significantly be above 50% saying yes, you should do that, Henrik.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, we are just now taking stock of what to do.
Yeah.
So what we will do now is I'm of course following you blindly out there, believing in the wisdom of the crowd. So yes, 68% of you basically said we should do it. We will do it. Okay, let's move on to another question.
Yeah. Because
then what we decided here at Global Tractors is if they don't want to play ball, we will go into an RFP process. That's the internal decision.
Yeah, you will go for a request for a proposal in the market.
Yeah, I will take this to the market and ask two other vendors and our existing vendor to submit a proposal, and I will go through the full RFP process. I'm disclosing something that we of course will not disclose to the vendor, but we would rather not go into an RFP. But it is the option. So the question now is, should we inform them about that? Should we tell them, if you don't play ball, we go for an RFP? Yes.
Seems like a very clear picture.
There's a quite clear picture here. Yeah. 94% of you believe that we should do that.
Yeah.
So basically, full disclosure, but we'll get back to that. Yeah. So basically, we will tell them what
the BATNA is.
Exactly. So, okay, I just need to, So before we move on and go to the negotiation table, we will and use your advice because we will do that. I will start negotiating with Clara in a while, and we will do that. Yeah. Before we go into that.
Yeah. We just want to touch upon what is the actual value of data in a negotiation, because this is close to our hearts, because we believe that data is some of the best things that you can do that back up your, how can you say, both your interest but also all of your arguments in the negotiation, to have data that validate that. So the first thing is that we have some 4 main drivers that leads to a reduction in the expenditure of IT services. Both that we also touch upon, that operating unit prices decrease over time. We have touched upon this based on Moore's law, that you get more compute. Those unit prices in, among others, server and storage decrease over time. What is also interesting is that the price of software is set individually, and it can be negotiated. This down here shows a plot of the price and the contract value, which shows that contracts that are 2 or 3 or 4 times bigger than a smaller contract gets the same price as the small clients. Then for
and also that within a certain area, you'll see a big distribution of prices.
Exactly. There's a big variance in the observed prices for a given contract value. And then for the AMS part, we have that maintenance effort is reduced over time, that increased operational maturity over time leads to higher reliability, efficiency, and higher maturity. which leads to a lower maintenance level over time, which will reduce the IT costs.
And basically these three, if you can put data on the table saying, I know that the market price right now for these services are X.
Yeah.
I know that the price should have been reduced with at least 10 or 15 or 20% since we entered into the agreement. That's a piece of data that's valuable in a negotiation. And you also said, if there's a benchmark for an ITO contract, put it on the table. That was your suggestion, that we did this at the beginning of the negotiation, and that is actually putting those data into play.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you're going into a software negotiation without knowing what others actually achieved, you're negotiating in blindness, and you will be told that whatever is put on the table is the best that they've ever offered anybody your size and so on. And I mean, the negotiation room will be full with bullshit. So do understand that the data is necessary for you in order to know what the realistic target zone is. And on the third one, if you have data on the operational maturity, I mean, what has been the development in the number of incidents and tickets and problems and so on over time, and what is a reasonable benchmark for the number, for the volume of incidents and problems you have right now. That is a valuable input that is also being accepted by vendors as a criteria for what's reasonable. Yeah. So these first three, those are all about pricing things correctly. The fourth one is more about buying only what you need.
Yeah. And right-sizing your capacity of IT. So by right-sizing, you make sure that you don't have underutilization in your IT setup, both in server and storage. And right-sizing your IT capacity leads to an increased efficiency, reduced cost, and maximized potential in your infrastructure setup. And then we have the real value of data. You touched upon it a bit in the last slide. But benchmarking is highly accepted by vendors in most of the IT agreement.
Not in software.
But not in software. And that's what we also state here. So we have software, it's not accepted by vendors, but in IT operations, AMS, and also application development, we have that benchmarking is actually accepted by vendors in the negotiation as like a benchmark for what is the sharp market price.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. So for software, we have a big software database where we have observed many data points, Microsoft among others, where we observe all the discounts that have been obtained in the market. And this we use to, give clients the insight of what is the sharp market price within your contract size. And this is not accepted by the vendors, but this will lead you to not negotiate in the blind, as Henrik also touched upon before. In the IT operations, it's accepted by the vendors. We often put our benchmark on the table
it's always, even written into many. Yeah. I mean, for application maintenance and IT operations, it's often written into the contracts.
Exactly.
That there's a benchmarking clause.
Yeah.
A thing that you should consider having into your contract, whether you will be using it or not, having a benchmark clause that either basically leads to an adjustment of the price one-to-one, or gives you room for negotiating and renegotiating the price, is a valuable and often quite useful vehicle in a contract. So consider that.
Yeah, but this is just also to give you what is the value of data in a negotiation. And now you almost was it 2/3 said that you should put the benchmark on the table prior to your negotiation. Seems like perhaps the right choice. But
a lot of you also said, I mean, 90% of you said, tell them that you will go for an RFP.
Yeah.
Okay, let's analyze that a little. Because the RFP in this case is what we call the BATNA, the best alternative to the negotiated agreement. What will we do if we do not agree? And going back to the Stockholm Syndrome, many people believe we have no BATNA. There's only one thing we can do, that's signing the agreement, but that's not true. There's always a BATNA. It might not be pretty, it might not be attractive, but in many cases there is a BATNA. And in software negotiations, we talked about this 100 times on these webcasts, but going beyond the deadline, escalating things, doing short-term extensions to the contract, there's lots of BATNAs rather than just accepting the unacceptable proposal at the table for the coming 3 years. So there are a lot of BATNAs. Now, in this case, my BATNA was the RFP.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, of course, when will I activate the BATNA?
Yeah.
What is my walk-away point? Now, there was 40 million in the benchmark. Mm-hmm. There was 50 million in the current contract. Now, what would you say, and just put it in the chat, if this was you, what would be your walk-away point? I would estimate the cost of transfer to another vendor as it takes time, cost, resources, so walk-away would be higher than 40 for me. Well, I think that's a good, I think
pretty good guess.
That makes sense to me as well. You know, the benchmark is 40, so 40 is kind of the reasonable price for this service. Mm. And we have to remember that this vendor does not have a transfer in cost. So it's actually also a good deal for the vendor to arrive at 40. Mm. So I'm tempted to go with 40 as my walk-away. So if the vendor said 41, would you then really go for an RFP? Because now you have to factor in the cost of actually transferring this, also the cost of the RFP. I mean, and then we have to basically guess on what those costs are. Let's say that we estimate the cost of the RFP to 1 million Danish kroner and the cost of transfer to another 2 million, so that would be 3 million, and then you would say, if those were the calculations, that my walk-away would be 43 million Danish kroner, which strikes me as somewhat unreasonable, obviously, because now we get the feelings in. So I would actually give them more than the fair market price for the service, but it makes sense. It's the logical choice. Overall satisfaction, I'm quite satisfied with the. I mean, they have a hard negotiator, of course, but I'm quite satisfied with the delivery, but I'm not that satisfied with the lack of proactivity. Okay, so I followed your advice, and here's what happened.
Yeah.
And also what would have happened if we did something else. So just say, take us through this.
The game three.
The game three.
So in question 1, you informed me that you will reveal the target zone, that you will reveal that you have done a prior analysis, and that the benchmark. This means that we are on the left side saying yes to this. On the other hand, you would have been on the right side, of course, if you had said no. In question 2, you inform me that your BATNA is an RFP, that you will go into the market and ask for a request for a proposal before that we enter the negotiation. This means that you have full disclosure, that you both reveal your target zone and your BATNA. And this means if we should just take the outcome on this one. And then we go back. Well, we just basically stay here. Yeah. So this means that I will game the price. Now I know that the target zone and I know the BATNA. This means that I will game the price for both what is the expenditures that you will look into going into the market, that you will make an RFP that is very time consuming. it's extremely expensive. You will need a lot of resources. I know that you are not having a dialogue with another vendor on the table right now. So I know that your best option is to enter into an RFP. This means that I will gain the price.
And you will gain it because actually by disclosing the fact that I will go for an RFP, I also disclosed that, as you just said, I actually gave you more information. I gave you the information. I'm not talking to a competitor right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is a piece of information that is highly valuable to you.
I know that you have not contacted and are not in a dialogue with another vendor, that you are not negotiating with another vendor right now.
Of course, the best outcome for you would have been that I told you I'm not going for an RFP and I'm not negotiating with someone else. That would, of course, have been the best one.
For you.
For me.
Yeah.
If I told you, if I gave you even more disclosure, I gave you the same level of disclosure, but I told you that you are actually negotiating with me and my BATNA is, I don't really have a BATNA.
Exactly, that would have been much better for me.
But the problem here is, or the issue at hand is that by disclosing the fact that the RFP is the BATNA, you basically are able to say, okay, that comes with a cost for me, and therefore you can factor that in. Now, if we consider the alternative outcome, you told me I told you the price, but I didn't tell you that the RFP was the option.
Then I don't know as a client or as a vendor if you are already having a dialogue with a potential new vendor. I don't know if you are already requesting a proposal from one of my biggest competitors that would very likely take over the contract. It's a profitable business for me, which means that this approach will I will provide you with a better offer at the first time.
Yeah, because the uncertainty about the opposition.
Exactly, because I can't read you. I don't know your BATNA. I don't know if you already have an agreement with a new vendor in place, that you have negotiated this. So I need to factor in this uncertainty into the negotiation.
On the other side, if we didn't, of course, so basically you did a good thing by providing us with the price.
Yeah.
No, I did a good thing by providing you with the price, so you did give me a good advice on providing that. But because if I hadn't provided you with the price, then you wouldn't know what I knew.
Exactly. So there is the outcome where you both don't provide me with a target zone or provide me with your BATNA. This means that I have no information, and this first offer will simply be a one-to-one extension of the current agreement. So this will be the baddest option for you, not to reveal anything. Then I will simply assume that you will go for a full extension. I will give you the same price, 50 million.
So the case as we constructed it had 4 outcomes, of which we believe, based on the experience we have, that if this was the kind of the opening meeting and the first proposal, we would have been better off by not disclosing the BATNA than actually disclosing it. It's a general advice in negotiation is to keep your BATNA to yourself until you actually need to use it, and you need to use it when you hit that final or no, that roadblock where you can't get around, where you tell them calmly what your BATNA is. But by not telling them, they will fear even worse BATNAs. Because it is very likely for Clara to believe that I have a proposal on my table from one of her competitors, which would be much worse than going into an RFP.
But this is a dilemma that many negotiators face.
It's the dilemma. It's called the negotiator's dilemma.
Yeah.
It's basically when to reveal what.
Yeah. So you have to be open reveal some, give some to get a shared overview of the potential value. But to be open, this can also harm your position when the value is distributed. For example, you give the value of the target price. It's of big value. I know that you know that there is a sharp market price, but to give me information of the BATNA provides too much information that I can gain, and that I know your BATNA is an expensive BATNA for you. And I know that. And I know you are not having a dialogue right now with another vendor.
Exactly. She's a hard one negotiating with, which would mean that you would factor in the 1 million you know I would have to pay for the RFP process. Exactly. You will factor that in.
Exactly.
Because, you need to do that because you know that I will factor it in.
Exactly. And also the transition. And also, yeah.
Okay, so negotiator's dilemma, which is not only about this. This was just an example of the negotiator's dilemma. But the negotiator's dilemma is about if you tell them everything and they tell you everything, then you actually basically have all the components of finding the most valuable options and make the best deals for both parties. Exactly. In the best of all worlds. So that's basically the A side. But whenever you go in there, you run the risk of harming yourself. So what do you do? Well, and we believe this is extremely important. Negotiation is like a dance, and you move some, they move some. I mean, you prepare what to disclose, and then you do it in small steps, and then you want them to disclose their interests as well.
Exactly.
So being open about the nature of your interest. We are interested in a fair market price.
Exactly.
You could also say, we are interested in continuing with you, but not saying that we're interested in continuing with you at all price, at any price. We can't move. It's expensive for us to move. But you can disclose the fact that you are interested in extending the contract. Because obviously for all people involved, they know that is of course easier for you. For me to basically extend the contract than going into a new one. But I don't need to tell them how interested I am. And then we need to ask them what's important for you. We need for them to disclose their interest. And often people ask us, but how do you do that? I mean, in practical terms, well, it's a good idea on these negotiation meetings to have a more informal setting where we brainstorm over ideas of what we can put into the agreement. So basically set aside time for that kind of activities in the negotiation. And I've seen magic happen in negotiation rooms over time when people go from, you and us and sitting at each side of the table and people going to the whiteboard and actually starting together to draw elements that could come into the agreement. Things we could do to basically move things forward. So this is very much about preparing. So have your good ideas ready to put on that whiteboard, but also ask them to prepare for that. Now, I did what you told me to do. So I got a price that was not very good. I got 48 million on the table. So what should I do now?
So you have you have chosen to show the target price and the benchmark, which means that D is perhaps not an option.
Well,
you can show it again.
Yeah, exactly. I think, a lot of you go for I mean, more than 50% of you go for option D, and a majority of the rest goes for option C, which is basically ask for an explanation and request a new proposal, or ask for an explanation and show the benchmark basically again and request a new proposal. I believe that C and D are both, in my opinion, good ways to go. Because if I do that, if I ask for an explanation, Clara, so why did you give me 48 million, 2 millions down on a benchmark against a benchmark on 40 which is close to an insult.
Yeah.
So why did you do that?
So here I have to explain to myself, why didn't I provide Henrik with a sharp market price that you know is, if you go into an RFP, is probably what will be on the table. But then I reveal I have some problems with this contract. So you have a setup on a dedicated infrastructure setup, and it will be quite expensive for me to transition it to a shared service. It will cost me 1 million Danish crown.
Yeah.
So there is some problems here. I have a failed internal process implementation project, and I'm struggling to make my own processes functional and successful.
But that's not good, Clara.
That's not good.
But it is the truth.
But it's the truth. You gave me some information, now I give you some. This is my explanation for the high price. And then you use some key resources with a limited availability for a customer-oriented governance.
Now, again, this is perhaps you will not give me all of those information in the beginning, but as we start talking, we dig into and we find out that these are three main problems at your side.
And I have factored this into the price of 48 million.
So the 48 million is a result of, just to sum up, the first one is really technology stuff. And it's solvable, but there's a price tag of 1 million.
Exactly.
But we can put it here. We can discuss how to do anything about it. If we do anything about it, I mean, if someone comes with the 1 million, we could share it or whatever.
Exactly.
You would be able to take the price down.
Exactly.
Some millions.
Yeah.
Because we get out of this dedicated environment.
Exactly.
The second one is really you're struggling with internal stuff.
I'm struggling with internal stuff.
You could say in a negotiation, you could say that by disclosing that, you're making yourself vulnerable. I would perhaps prefer someone who's not, another vendor who's not struggling with that kind of internal implementation project issues.
So this is perhaps not very strategic for me to...
But by the way, a parenthesis, they are all struggling with those kind of internal projects. So I will probably not find that the grass is that much greener on the other side. But it does make you vulnerable. But it also allows us to say, okay, could we do something together about this?
Exactly.
Or would a good idea be to say, okay, this has a risk for, say, 6 months or 1 year. Could we do something about the contract that would kind of take out some of the commercial risks, saying, okay, we can accept longer response times or lower SLAs for a period while you are getting your house in order, but only for a period.
Exactly. So the failed internal processes, perhaps meeting me with some lower requirements for a period of time, maybe gets the penalty down that I am facing, which I have factored in the price. Because you have factored this into your price, and you will have to do it. I mean, because and then the last one, which is really about the resources that we have in this governance process, whatever that is, stand-up meetings, which was something that we have agreed to do together. But this is really about solving this. Could be about replacing some of the resources with other resources, taking down the schedule, the number of meetings we have, something like that would accommodate your problems with the scarcity of these resources. And this is some of the interest that I can put on the table, but where, if going back to the options, Henrik can put something on the table that is of big value to me, but doesn't cost Henrik that much. And that goes back to the fact that asking for the explanation is really what can get us into these problems that we can now start negotiating. And I hope you basically acknowledge that this is how we get to a solution of getting the price down. Because if we address these three things, we will be able to both address the proactivity issue, because the last one has very much to do with the proactivity issues,
and we can address the pricing issue as well, because the two first have an impact on that.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So I think now we have the next question, yeah. So what options can you help Henrik generate to make the pie bigger? We just addressed some of them.
Yeah.
Maybe there is some more.
Yeah. Do you have other ideas of things we could put into an ITO agreement that would make the pie bigger, that would allow both of us to get a better agreement and also allow clients perhaps to lower the price or offer me some more?
Exactly. And remember, extension is the favorable thing to do.
Yeah.
And RFP is the last resort.
The all-time classic, which is good, duration of the contract. So
exactly.
we are
big
discussing
value, insured profit over a longer period of time.
The funny thing about that is that duration of contract is sounds like a simple thing, but that can be quite complex actually, because we could have either a 5-year contract with a 2-year extension period with a guaranteed price, or a 2 and 2 and 2 or whatever. We could also have a 20-year contract with an exit opportunity after 5 years or 4 years or 2 years. And an exit price connected with the exit. An exit price that could then decline over. I mean, duration of the contract is a huge area where you can have a lot of different options that you can put on the table. We have several contracts right now that we are discussing with clients where this and all kinds of variants of this is on the table. And to clients, a 10-year contract sounds like, okay, that's completely crazy. But it's not crazy, because most of ITO contracts in private sector most of contracts in private sector actually runs for 10 years or more. They of course signed as a 4-year contract with extension options, but making what actually happens, the norm in the contract would be like entering 10 years contract with good exit opportunities after 5 years or 4 years or something like that.
And also remember the contract terms
that
we also discussed. Sometimes the contract terms are even more important than the price. So having a longer contract or a longer contract period with the correct contract terms, it's also time consuming to negotiate a contract every 4 years.
It is. So we talked about duration with the early termination rights. We had that. Scalability. Growth and increase of consumption, but without guaranteed payment. I mean, that is actually, and even disclosing. Would you be interested in this, Clara?
Of course, I would always be interested to scale the contract. But if you put on the table some of your growth plans, how can we ensure that this contract grow in the coming extension period? That is of big value to me, because I can maybe look into a much higher profit, and I can see where this contract will go over the next 5 or 10 or 15 years.
Disclosing your plans and your prognosis for the future is of huge value to the vendor. Negotiator's dilemma, you might not want to do that, at the first meeting. But as you move along, this is something that disclosing those plans with your strategic vendors will of course allow them to be more proactive, sell more, but it will also allow them to provide you with a better price at the outset. And make sure, of course, that this is regulated in the contract. Expanding the scope and the functionalities. Always be on the quest for things that the vendor is offering that you could put into the contract and that could make it more attractive, even as something you actually buy or something that is described in the contract as an option you can buy.
Exactly.
Okay, we're getting
So I think touch upon, we have been through this. This is what we advise our clients to keep updating during a negotiation. The scope, the supporting data, target zone, the interest, your own interest, the BATNA walk-away criteria and options.
And make sure to maintain the list of options.
Exactly.
Put more options as on that list. The options list is really the way to arrive at a good at a good agreement.
Yeah, and then the final slide is the proposed negotiation sequence.
Yeah, which is of course something that no negotiation. I mean, no two negotiations are the same. So you need to basically map out the sequence that will fit the needs of your particular negotiation. But it is really very much about making sure that the opening presentation is there, that you present your overall interests, that you present whatever benchmark you have. Don't go into details about your BATNA. That's the hammer you want to basically save for later. But make sure that they understand in which direction you want and what's interesting. And if you have any data, supporting data, make sure that they understand that you know where you should be in terms of market price. They can contest that, they will, and you can go into that because that's a discussion about the criteria. Do we actually agree that this is an objective benchmark and so on and so forth? But that's a discussion worth taking because it leaves you in a better place during the negotiation about they understanding why you are looking at the target zone as you are.
Yeah.
I hope this gave you a bit of a view of how vendors think. We have a lot of research on quarterly analytics that in Danish, unfortunately, but that goes into a much more detail on this. So please refer to that. And any other questions or comments, feel free to call us, write us, text us, whatever. We are here to basically help also to just provide good advice on the telephone without charging people for the first 10 minutes. So, so don't hesitate to call us.
Yeah.
And have a good day.